Man, what an absolutely fabulous week it's been in football, and what a fabulous week it's going to be as we move on here, getting closer and closer to the National Football League. Startup of the season in 3 weeks, college football also in 2 weeks. Welcome to another edition of Outspoken. I'm Dan Sileo, and it's been absolutely awesome. Major League Baseball, too. We're starting to see which teams are really going to be the contenders. We're going to be the pretenders as we move on, getting closer to the postseason here. But let's start it off, obviously, surrounding what we've seen in football these last couple days here. There is no doubt there is a massive train wreck going on in Cleveland. It really was a train wreck at the very beginning when they basically had to bribe Deshaun Watson to want to come and play in Cleveland. Jimmy Haslam got on an airplane, made that pitch when he was still with the Houston Texans. And even with the 28 sexual misconduct cases against Deshaun Watson, what did the Cleveland Browns do anyway? They went out and fully guaranteed a $230 million contract, theoretically giving this guy a contract raise in the process of being investigated by the National Football League for misconduct. Okay, so let's just put that aside there itself, where this was always going to come back to haunt this guy if he did not play well in Cleveland. Cleveland is one of the best fan bases in all of America. Make no mistake about it. There's a reason they call it the dog pound. It's one of the fan bases that expects their players to show up and play, especially when you're getting paid that exorbitant amount of money. Fully guaranteed. No player in National Football League history ever got a fully guaranteed contract but Deshaun Watson. 28 misconduct cases against him for sexual misconduct with women. Let's just put this in here now and say it. Hey, listen, you want to debate 3 or 4? You can't debate 28. It has to be something to the point that this guy's got low character. So what does he do yesterday? He absolutely craps the bed in front of the fan base that was tolerant with him. Achilles injury that he got in 2024. And yesterday, he was an absolute train wreck in the quarterback battle with Shedeur Sanders. So what does he do after? He starts to go down the excuse lane because that's the only thing he has left. Because poor play, you're going to be booed. He came out with a comment, and I'm paraphrasing here, that same fan base that was booing me is also the same fan base that was cheering when I injured my Achilles in 2024. Son, you're not getting the benefit of the doubt with 28 sexual misconduct cases, and you go to Cleveland and you don't play well. That's not what this is. Look, the NFL is very tolerant for poor character and poor behavior. But if you don't step up and play well, they're going to rain down on you. And that's exactly what the Cleveland fan base is doing. He's basically making it impossible for Shedeur Sanders not to win that job. Boy, it's time for Cleveland and Jimmy Haslam to cut the umbilical cord and just say it what it is. That's the worst contract in the history of the National Football League. 230 fully guaranteed to a guy who's being accused of being a sexual predator. Hey, guy, what did you think the ending was going to be? It was going to be what? Rainbows and butterflies? When you get into bed with snakes, you got to be prepared to get bit. And this is what you have here. Congratulations, Cleveland. You continue the conveyor belt of crappy football play at the quarterback position with low character. Hey, like I said, what did you expect? A model citizen? You got to give me more than this. Blaming the dog pound. That's a new one. All right. You know, I put a tweet out over on my X account in 2021, and I basically said that Lincoln Riley would be the very worst hire in the history of USC football. You know, you've got people that are just crowning this guy as one of the absolute best coaches in all of college football. Well, let me give you his record. I wrote it down here. He's 6-13 versus top 25 teams. He's 24-15 at Southern Cal, total in 4 years. He's 16-11 in conference play, and versus top 10 teams, he's 0-5. And you're trying to tell me this guy's the best coach since Pete Carroll was at USC? In what area are we talking about? Defensive players don't want to play there at Southern Cal. You rarely get any great offensive players coming out of that program that make an impact. And now that you're in the Big Ten, you think you're going to be a player in that conference when you run a finesse offense like that? Let's roll it back here a little bit, and let's go to what he did at Oklahoma. Somebody help me out. And what did that coach do when he was at Oklahoma? What winning did he do there? When you were the head coach at Oklahoma, one of the most prestigious programs in all of the country, when you've got Bud Wilkinson and you've got a guy like Barry Switzer that have won numerous national championships, you're not gauged on winning conference championships. You're gauged on winning national championships. Great recruiting, great players, all the things that those guys created at that program. Lincoln Riley fell short at OU. Fast forward, he goes to USC, and they open up the treasure chest. They give him and make him one of the highest paid college football coaches. They give him a $9 million home. They give him every single thing that he needs to be successful, and he is falling flat on his face. That's not a place that you go 9-4 and say we're building in the right direction. USC is one of those football programs like the University of Miami. And I've been very critical of the University of Miami prior to Mario Cristobal showing up. You can't go 9-4 at those programs and call yourself a success. You go 9-4, guess where? At North Carolina, Vanderbilt, places like that. You don't go 9-4 at Southern Cal, Miami, Ohio State. That's how you lose your jobs. Lincoln Riley is the most overrated and overhyped coach in all of college football. There is no getting around it. You show me where he's been successful so far at Southern Cal to where Southern Cal even looks like Southern Cal football. Take a look at the stands. You know, USC used to be the 33rd NFL football team. When there was no Rams and no Chargers in Los Angeles, that was the 33rd NFL team. People in Los Angeles looked at that program and said that that program was one of the gold standard programs in all of the country. There's no getting around this. USC has absolutely been a tragedy with Lincoln Riley. As a matter of fact, if you really want to go down the lane of Los Angeles sports, you can make the argument between the Lakers and USC, they're the most overhyped brand. For two programs that haven't done anything outside of that stupid thing that you had there in Orlando, where people counted that title that they won there with the NBA championship with the Mickey Mouse title. Los Angeles doesn't have anything but overhyped teams when it comes to Southern Cal and it comes to the Lakers. And USC is right in that mix, folks. Make no mistake about it. And Lincoln Riley, he doesn't win this year. It is time for USC to make a change. All right. Our great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the number one injury law firm in all of America for a reason. It's because they win. Over 30 years of success says that this is the best company on the planet if you've ever been injured on the job. I tell you this all the time, folks, about the family in Pennsylvania that was initially offered $650K. They got nearly $30 million in settlement. Or the family in Florida that was initially offered $350,000. They ended up getting nearly $12 million in settlement. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound 529 to do me a favor. You tell them Big Sills sent you. We are going to talk some more NFL football with our friend George Kurtz. We'll do that next. Keep it right here on SportsGrid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan has to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, folks, no question about it. The National Football League Week 2 of the exhibition season is concluded, and a lot of storylines are starting to come out. And we're starting to get an opportunity at really seeing, I think, some depth level. And what I've said before, listen, you're not going to see a lot of the front 22 guys playing in the NFL. What you're going to see, though, is you're going to get an opportunity to really get a chance to see some of the depth level here. And George Kurtz joins us now here, and I first and foremost want to start this bad puppy out here. And, George, I got to tell you, man, there's stuff going on in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson. Now he's blaming the dog pound and what's going on here. This has to go down. Do you not agree? As arguably the worst contract in pro football history, $230 million fully guaranteed for a guy that really hasn't played in 2.5 years. He played a total of 19 games, and this thing is just a train wreck right now.
In pro football history? How about professional sports history? I mean, and I'm not making a joke, Dan. Can we think of a worse contract? I mean, $230 million. I know NBA players getting paid insane amounts here. So maybe there's an NBA player who got, took someone, robbed somebody. But in NFL, MLB, certainly NHL history, absolutely. And he's tone deaf. You're blaming the fans, even if you want to say they booed you when you got hurt. Which, listen, I don't care what a person. You shouldn't boo somebody when he gets hurt. Okay, I understand that, but you've sucked. You've been awful. You've been terrible. Your history as well here. I mean, you've robbed them, Chief. All right, and listen, I don't feel bad for the Cleveland organization at all. That's what you get when you made that trade, right? You got what you deserved there. But yeah, very tone deaf yesterday in what he said.
Absolutely. I mean, 28 sexual misconduct cases, George. When you get into bed with a snake, you know you're going to get bit, and there's a chance you got bit, and they ended up getting bit here. So is Shedeur Sanders then the answer, or is that yet to be determined? And the answer is not on the Cleveland Browns. You know, they've had 42 different quarterbacks in 24 years since they've been that expansion team when they came back to Cleveland. Is the answer on the team or not on the team right now, quarterback?
You know, I look at Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets as the same thing. You don't want to be good this year. All right. You don't want to because you want to get that low or high draft pick, depending on how you look at it, next year's draft and get that quarterback. So to answer your question, no. The answer to Cleveland's quarterback problem is not on the team. I have nothing against Shedeur Sanders. All right. I'm a Cowboy fan. Deion was great for the Cowboys. So certainly sort of root for the kid. Does he look like a number one quarterback? No, he doesn't. He looks like a number two. All right. So I don't think he's the answer. Deshaun Watson is certainly not the answer. You know, so you don't want to be good this year, which means for me, Dan, I'm playing Shedeur. Let's see what I can get out of him. All right. At least I know he might have some kind of ceiling, some kind of upside. Let's see what we get out of him. And by the way, if he implodes, fine. then I get my quarterback next year, the Arch Manning sweepstakes or whatever it might be there. So that's the way I would look at it if I'm Cleveland. I understand real life situations are different. The GM may be like, well, you know what? If we suck this year, I'm not going to be around next year to get Arch Manning. That's true. He may need to win more games. Same thing with Aaron Glenn of the Jets. They may need to win more games to save their jobs. I get it. But as far as an organization is concerned, I'd be thrilled if I wasn't all that good this year.
Absolutely. Andrew Berry, the GM of that team, he's going to be held accountable if that thing ends up really looking the way it's looking and way it's starting right now in Cleveland there. So let me keep you in the state of Ohio here. I know Joe Burrow has done this earlier in his career, George, but at the end of the day here, do you think he can do it again? Do you think Joe Burrow can overcome the Bengals and start winning?
Yes, I do. All right. Now, once again, they made some moves on defense as well, right? And like the Cowboys, that defense doesn't need to be great. Doesn't need to be even need to be good. Can it be average or slightly below average? If it is, and Burrow can stay healthy, that's the key there. Can he stay healthy and play 15, 16, 17 games? If he can, Dan, they're going to score a lot of points. We know that, right? Burrow, Higgins, Chase, even Chase Brown. I mean, they can score points with anybody there. So I think the Bengals are a fun team. I think we're going to enjoy their games because they're not going to be boring games. They're going to be probably higher scoring games here. If they can stay healthy, where defense could just not implode, I don't think they win with division, but I think a wild card is certainly within reach.
I see the star over your left shoulder, and I want to get your thoughts on what Troy Aikman said this week about the Dallas Cowboys. You know, I'm going to paraphrase it here, George. He basically came out and said, you know, all of this starts at the top. 30 years, and the fans deserve more. That relationship between Troy Aikman and Jerry Jones has always been a contentious one, to say the least here. I mean, but he's right, isn't he? This is really all on Jerry here the last 30 years, and Troy is really just being critical. But is he being fair?
Oh, he's absolutely being fair. You and I have discussed this before, Dan. I mean, what other GM would have 30 years of no championship games, no Super Bowl, and still have a job? And Jerry admits this. You know, it's not like Jerry hides from this. He does admit it. You go, oh, I know nobody would have it, but it's his toy, and he wants to play with it. And you own the team, you're spending the money, I guess you have that right. You know, I'm a Cowboy fan, Dan, and I will always be a Cowboy fan. Doesn't matter. And I'll rail against Jones and everything else, but my eyes are open. I know how the Cowboys are. I know how Jerry Jones is. He's never going to hire a true head coach because he wants to control the team. And I have to think it's Schottenheimer, but let's face it, you know, he's not Bill Parcells or one of these guys. You know, like when Harbaugh came available, people are like, oh, Harbaugh to the Cowboys. I'm just laughing. Never going to happen. Harbaugh's not going to have Jerry in meetings and Jerry doing all these press conferences. This is what he loves to do. Not going to have it. That was never going to happen. It is what it is with the Cowboys. So if you're a Cowboy fan, you just have to come to that realization. You know, Jerry's going to play with his toy. You know, so Troy Aikman is absolutely correct. And listen, Michael Irvin has said the same things. Emmitt Smith has said the same things. We all know this. You know, I just don't think that this should catch us by surprise anymore. We know how Jerry is.
You know, I have a producer that's in his early 20s, Robert, right? He would never know that the Dolphins at one time, George, when you and I were kids, were a gold standard. What has happened to the Dolphins? They haven't won a playoff game in 15 years. That was a gold standard team. What happened? Is it just easy to say ownership with Stephen Ross and with Wayne Izinga that has turned that program into one of the worst programs in football?
You know, to back up your point, I grew up in the 70s, okay? People always, and I was born and raised in New York, and people always ask me, why are you a Cowboy fan? Well, my father wasn't a football fan at all. The Giants and Jets sucked in the 70s. So if you didn't like the local team, you liked Pittsburgh, the Raiders were big, Broncos, Cowboys, and the Dolphins. All right, those are the five huge teams in the 70s. Then Marino in the 80s, that's where all the Dolphin fans came from. My stepfather was a Dolphin fan here. So what happened here? I think it's a combination of all. I don't think the ownership's been terrible, maybe more absentee. I do think Ross wants to win. He's gone about it the wrong way. The Brady situation, when he was going on there behind the scenes, you know, but he was trying. I guess if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying here. I don't think their drafting has been great. Listen, they went out and got two. They thought he was the answer, Dan. He wasn't the answer, right? Not really built for pro football here. So it is what it is here. So I think it's a combination of things. Tough division as well.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, they've been looking for a quarterback since Dan Marino. We're going to drop a bunt, talk some baseball with George Kurtz next year on SportsGrid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
We're going to talk baseball with my friend George Kurtz and get his thoughts. We're going to go Yankees right out of the gate here. I mean, you know, there's no doubt Aaron Judge has been an issue there for the Yankees here. And I'll ask you flat out here, do you believe the Rays can hold off the Yankees? Now they get some bad news on Stanton, too. It looks like he had a setback. They're going to need some more punch in that lineup. You know, the Yankees have been on fire as of late here. Can the Rays hold them off, or do you think the Yankees end up catching them down the line here?
Well, it depends how you look at it. We're going to go glass half full or glass half empty with the Yankees. All right, you already mentioned Stanton probably done for the season. I don't see him coming back. He hurt the other calf, whatever. And they lost Ryan Weathers yesterday, too. Now, I have not heard a report as of about 2 hours ago about what's wrong with Weathers, but when you saw him come up, he had the glove in his face, screaming in it. That's not good. You know, and it's an elbow injury, so I guess we're all crossing our fingers and holding our breath there. Max Fried could be back on Saturday. We don't know. The Yankees play a doubleheader against the Red Sox on Saturday, so they would like him back to cover one of those games here. The good news is they're getting Bellinger back today, and Judge is starting to hit off a tee now. So what are we, August 23rd, maybe first week in September, mid-September, he could be back here. So how are we looking at it there? I think at this point for the Yankees, it's getting healthy. Winning a division is not important anymore. Getting healthy for the playoffs. You're going to make the playoffs, right? You'd like to be the 4th seed, get home field advantage in the wild card round here. You don't want to be the 5th seed. That's the funny thing, because then you're probably going to Fenway Park. You'd rather be the 6th seed. If you're going to be on the road, you might as well go to the American League Central, probably the White Sox, right? I'd rather go to the White Sox than the Red Sox. So it's a funny little thing there. The Yankees probably want to finish 4th or 6th. So I don't think they're going to finish 1st. I think the Rays will hold on to win it. But the Rays they're a roller coaster team too, Dan. I mean, they win 10 in a row. They lose 6 out of 8. We don't know what we're going to get from anybody in the American League.
Boy, I'll tell you, George, I don't want to start sounding like Met fans because that's total loser stuff. So let me go here with this here when we're talking Yankees here. When did we get to a point, George, where all of a sudden now, hey, we're hoping just to get to the playoffs here, hopefully to have a good showing here. I always thought it was about hanging World Series titles, not hanging American League East titles. I mean, when did we get to this point here with Aaron Glenn and with Brian Cashman? I mean, come on, dude. We got to win. Yankees are about winning, not about putting a good TV show on. Winning championships. I have not heard that in 10-plus years. When are we going to hear this again?
I don't know. Listen, they'll say
I'm
that.
sounding like a Yankee fan. I get it. I'm sounding like a Yankee.
Well, when you talk about it, the first thing I'm thinking about, this is why people hate Yankee fans, right? Because we all, so it's a World Series of luck. Now, once again, the game is different. Growing up, making the playoffs is a big thing growing up. Oh my God, we made the playoffs. Only 4 teams made it. The wild card came around. If you're a Yankee fan, that's what, 30 years or younger? You don't know what losing is. You have no freaking clue, right? Because they've been great forever. All right. So you don't know what a losing season is. But I'm the same person. Wild card, don't care. Divisional round, talk to me about the ALCS. Once you get that far, then you've had a good season here. But to answer your question, I don't think winning is the most important thing for the Yankees anymore. Not since George passed. All right. Hal runs it differently. All right. He wants to make money, which is why they don't spend as much as they could spend here. We've all seen the stats. The Yankees, they'll have a top 3, top 4 payroll, but they bank more money than most teams. All right, they're not spending all their revenue on the players. They're not. The numbers will bear that out here. They want to make money. It's different. So what you said, when do we want to be a good TV show? I think it's exactly what the Yankees want to be, a good TV show. Get the eyeballs on the screens, get the fans in the seats. That's what they want here. And I'm the first person to tell you, watching the Yankees right now sucks. It's like watching paint dry, grass grow, and any other axiom you want to use there. It's boring. It's not fun. And I think that probably bothers Hal more than anything else. The fact that watching the Yankees is not a fun time right now.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was a kid and Chambliss hit the home run in 76 to put him in the World Series for the first time, from 1964 to 1976, we stunk, and the Mets across the bay were the team there in New York. And, I'm not going through that again. I want to win some championships here. I'll put my Yankee fandom down here. Ohtani, is he going to be more important to the Dodgers on the hill or at the plate when it comes to the playoff time?
I think it's assuming health of everybody else. I think if they can only choose one, it's at the plate here. All right, because you've got Glass now, you've got Yamamoto, you've got Snell, you've got Skubal. That's 4 starters, by the way. You only need 4 in the playoffs here. So you don't even need Ohtani. So no, it's to get his bat in there because they do need that bat. I know Betts is hitting a little bit better now. Muncy hits his home runs. Freeman's up and down. Hernandez pretty much been invisible. Tucker, they'd probably like to shoot to the moon. All right, they need Ohtani's bat in the playoffs here. He is that big bat. So that what makes everything go. That's like the Yankees with Judge, right? They make everything go here. So if they can only have one, they want his bat to be 100% more than his pitching. Assuming everybody's healthy, they don't need his pitching. Not his starting pitching anyway. Could use some bullpen help.
I got to tell you here, George. George is probably looking down. George Steinbrenner looking down at Mark Walter, the kind of shady things that he's doing behind the scenes. And, circumnavigating there the salary cap a little bit here, kind of putting money here over there to try to win ball games. I got to like it, George. I got to like it. Appreciate you. Cab Farrar, more ball pop. We'll do that.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS. But then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, folks, no question about it. We're going to catch up, hopefully, with our friend Cab Farrar here. And I got to tell you guys, without a doubt here, man, we just had the conversation on the Yankees, and I'll expand more here, is that, look, there's no question that franchise for the last 15 years has done nothing, the Yankees. And George was right. The opportunity for the New York Yankees to be a championship ball team has completely changed under Hal. I had a great relationship with George Steinbrenner when he lived in Tampa, and he would come on my program all the time. He'd come even in the studio, and we would talk about the Yankees, and we would talk about the success of the baseball team. And it was a number one priority for him to put the best baseball players with the best people possible around that franchise. That's not been the case. How is Brian Cashman still the general manager of that baseball team? How in God's name is he still the general manager? And I'm going to go to my friend here, Cab Farrar, and I'm going to give him a compliment right here on the air. You ready for this? He wears the best flat brim of anybody on SportsGrid. And I love the way you wear the flat brim lid there with a jacket. We're all good. He joins us now here on the program. And I want you to answer that question for me. How is Brian Cashman still the general manager of the New York Yankees with the lack of success that they've had over the last 15 years?
I know at the beginning of the season, as a fan, it was fun to watch, but I felt the curtain being pulled over our eyes at the beginning of the season. You do not have – how did you spend so much money? And I understand you've got a few people that are injured, but, you can put Judge back in the lineup. It's not going to fix the entire problem from top to bottom. 1 through 9, this team cannot hit the baseball, Dan. And I was talking about it just yesterday when I was breaking down yesterday's game. I was like, I don't trust the Yankees to score 2 runs, much less 4 or 5 runs in a baseball game, which is usually what you're looking at needing for a win. I mean, this team is broken when it comes to the offensive side. Pitching-wise, they've got some pitchers in there. You look at their team ERA, it's first in baseball. It's the only reason that, they're even in a playoff conversation, which is crazy. I'm going to say it again. How do you have so many problems 1 through 9 in this lineup with the amount of money that you're spending?
Absolutely. I don't get it. Cab, I'm going to play a game with you here. Best of. So here we go. Best player in the game today is who for you?
Shohei Ohtani. He's the best to ever play.
Right now, he's the best guy in the game today. Is he having the best season?
No. Okay. So if you're asking me, and this is where we get, so I'd say maybe Yordan Alvarez, maybe at the plate. What Yordan Alvarez is doing is incredible at the plate. The only thing is, the Astros, they're 1 game below 500. They're in first place in that division, but you're sitting 1 game below 500. So I think if maybe they had 10 more wins, we'd probably be talking about Yordan Alvarez a little bit more. And then I guess PCA is the conversation for the MVP, right? With all the leadoff home runs. But for me, it's Yordan Alvarez. I think he's the best hitter in baseball. I think we talked about that last time, actually.
Yeah, let's quantify that and go down that lane here and say 2026. Best division in baseball in 2026 is what?
Anything that's not in the AL, we can say that right now.
Yeah, right on. Hey, by the way, what do you think has happened with that? Before you answer that question, what do you think has happened to the American League? Is it parity or bad ball or both?
As a whole, what's happened to the league? Man, I don't know if you can put your finger on one thing as a whole, because it's always going to come like what we're talking about with the Yankees. It comes down to individual. Then you've got some teams like the Rays who haven't spent a ton of money. I'm a huge Rays fan, so I love what the Rays are doing. But yeah, the AL is just bad across the board. You look at that third wild card spot. It's going to be awarded to a team that's 500 or less. I truly think that. And that's crazy to think that we're going to have a team that played 162 baseball games and lost half of them or more and is making the playoffs. That's a little ridiculous, don't you think?
Absolutely it is here. So let's go with the best division. What do you think is the best division in Major League Baseball in 2026?
I guess I'd say Central. Let me pull this up really quick. I don't want to. I don't want to. Yeah, I'd say probably the Central. Let me pull this up. Yeah, I'd probably have to go with the Central division. Where is this? Sorry, I'm trying to pull up my playoff thing right now. I don't think that it's interesting to think when you look at this that if the NL has how many teams that would be in the playoff run if they were just switched over to the AL side, and that's what I was trying to pull up here. Is I think you've got like 5 teams out of the just out of the playoffs in the NL,
right?
That would be in the playoffs if they were in the American League, which is crazy. And it might not even be 5. I had that pulled up and I can't find it now. It might be 6 teams, but I need to see it. That's crazy to think that there's 5 or 6 teams that would be playoff teams if they were on the other side.
I want to ask you this one too. If you had to pick an American League Manager of the Year, would it be the guy in Tampa or would it be the guy in Chicago, Venables?
Oh, man.
Cash or Venables for American League Manager of the Year? Who would you take?
I've talked so highly about what the Rays have been doing, man. I'd have to go with the Rays there. I think, too, my favorite thing about them is just the amount of money that they've spent to see them up here at the top. You know, with the Rays and the Yankees and the Red Sox in that division over there, that's not a bad division, especially for the American League East. But the Yankees, we started talking about them off the top. They are jumping off a cliff right now. Like, this is not a team that I expect to get right. I think out of their next, how many games do we got left on the season? Like 30 games? If they go 15-15, I'd be happy if I was a fan, because I think it's going to be worse than that.
Wow. Biggest surprise for you in baseball so far this year? Would it be the Chicago White Sox?
I don't know. Probably, I'd probably have to go against them, and they're not. If you're a Chicago White Sox fan, you're not going to like this, but Or you said White Sox. I thought you said Cubs. Yeah, White Sox. It is absolutely the White Sox. Absolutely the White Sox. There is no question about it. I wish I could say Marlins, because I was really pulling for the Marlins early in the season. And I think the Marlins are right above 500, maybe like one game above 500 right now. But White Sox definitely. They're the standout this season. No question about it.
What do you think has happened to Seattle this year? You know, I made a comment yesterday, Cab, that, and you know this as well as anybody, when you're a catcher and you're behind the dish 130 games, that right hand from a pitcher does this. Bang, 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 bang. Then you start getting these lazy hits to right field. And that's kind of what you're starting to see with Cal Raleigh and starting to really take its toll on him. When do you get to a point where you start doing this? Hey, let's find another position for him. Let's get him out there so he's not taking the wear and tear on his knees and on his right hand for him to be able to get his bat back, because that's a grinding spot back there behind the plate. I've played it behind there, and when you're putting those kind of innings back there, that's a lot. Do you think the Mariners need to start visiting that and go down that lane with him, with Cal Raleigh?
Yes, and also they should have already done that a long time ago. So I want to say this as somebody that trains with a lot of baseball players. Cal has changed his swing. And now when I say this, I don't want people to think, oh, so it's so simple that some, guy that gets on the internet and talks sports can just point out what it is. Then why hasn't he fixed it? I'm not saying it's simple to fix, but it is simple to see what's happening. His back elbow has disconnected from his hip. His hands are extending a little too far out, which is causing his barrel not to stay in the zone as long. And when your barrel's not in the zone as long, you don't have as much of an opportunity to hit the baseball. What I'm getting at is this has been something that I don't understand how they have not taken him out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and fixed the swing, guys. It's a mechanical thing in his swing. So, and it drives me crazy.
We're going to continue more Major League Baseball with Cab Farrar next here on SportsGrid.
You wouldn't have your ex officiate your wedding.
Do you, Jake? Liar? Cheater? Gaslighter.
So why have anyone but America's largest injury law firm handle your injury case? With over $30 billion recovered for our clients, there's a reason to go big.
Gaslighter, coitus crier, he's got more red flags than a bullfighter's attire.
Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
And we're talking some baseball with my friend here, Cab Farrar, the best flat brim guy we have here at SportsGrid. That guy wears that brim great. I got to talk to you about Ohtani here, okay? So it looks like he's starting to throw a little bit more. We just asked George Kurtz this question. I'll get your thoughts on it. Do you believe that it's going to be more important for Dave Roberts in the postseason for Ohtani to be on the rubber, or do you think it's going to be more important for him to be at the dish as they get into the postseason?
That's such a loaded question. That's I heard you when you asked him. That is such a loaded question. Just so you know, like I'm a pitcher, so like I want to sit here and tell you pitcher, but I did listen to George's answer, and he is right. They do have a phenomenal staff with or without Ohtani in that rotation. So yes, I could see where you're saying that I want to put him at the plate. If you only get one or the other, you put him at the plate. I do understand that. But let me say what I think that they can do is use him out of the bullpen, right? And I know that's I'm circumventing the answer. I'm saying, oh, let him hit and throw out of the bullpen. But in the playoffs, that's what I'm doing. I'm not working Ohtani into the starting rotation. I've got him set for my guy who just doesn't have it that day. So if you go out there and you let two of the first three base runners on, I'm pulling you out and putting Ohtani in because we don't have time for you to work through it. It's the playoffs. But if I only got to pick one, I think George is right. I'd put him at the plate.
Do you agree, though, for Dave Roberts, when you want to go out and try to win a World Series, you're looking for the ability to be able to have something where you want to be able to have options. And
Yes.
the Dodgers need options. Do you not agree? Because you can make a comment about their middle relief. They were talking about even maybe adding Chapman at the trading deadline. So maybe they were even looking down with that lane. Can you imagine that if that guy landed there with Scooble? You might as well just have said, forget about it, give them a trophy here. But aren't you looking for options, Cab, when you're Dave Roberts, when you get into the postseason? Because the options, I think that's what beat Toronto last year, was the fact that he had options on what he did in his pitching rotation.
I agree completely. And this brings me back to what I was saying about the playoffs are not the time to work through it. If you walk somebody, if you give up a leadoff hit and then you walk somebody, you got a couple people on, I'm not letting you work through that. I'm not seeing what happens on that fourth or fifth hitter. I'm moving on. I'm moving on to my next pitcher. And that's where it's like, if you've got somebody in the bullpen like Ohtani, who is arguably the number one pitcher for pretty much every team in baseball, and now he's not even in your starting rotation and he's coming out of the bullpen for you. I mean, that's how good this team is that the Dodgers have built. You know, that's another conversation, but it's just ridiculous, if I'm being honest.
I got to ask you about the ABS. We're now in the back half of the season here. Has it been great for Major League Baseball, in your opinion, guy? You know, as a pitcher, do you like it and what it's brought to the game?
I'm going to be honest, I love it. And there's a lot of times when you see something that's changed, whether it's a rule, you can talk about the kickoff in football, right? How they've completely changed the kickoff. There's a lot of times when things are changed that I don't know if we like it because it's not what we're used to. There's pushback. But as far as the ABS goes, they're quick, right? It's instant. We're not sitting over there watching a record, or we're not watching a replay over and over again. It's instant. And I think it gives a little bit of power back to the players. I like it. I love it. I like seeing the dynamic between whether a pitcher calls it or the catcher calls it if you're back there. I think it's been good for baseball. I don't see any problem with it.
The only thing I miss is Earl Weaver going after umpires and that kind of stuff and barking the way that they used to bark there. How do you think the umpires have received it?
You know, I was actually just kind of thinking about that in the back of my mind as I was saying it. I think that they should receive it like this. Be glad that we didn't go full electronic, okay? We're keeping umpires a part of the game. You're still a part of baseball, because there are some people out there that are going to say, hey, we know whether it's a strike or a ball. Why are we letting human error come into it, right? Why are we putting even the potential of human error into something when we can completely remove it? Well, this is a middle ground that we found for you, so be glad that you're still getting to umpire.
What would a work stoppage and the type of damage this time compared to last time when they had a work stoppage, what would it do to Major League Baseball and the damage it would do to the game if they had another work stoppage of significant time? Not just missing a couple games or maybe some exhibition games in the spring here, but I'm talking lengthy time, like 50, 60, 70 games. What would something like that mean to the destruction of the game?
You know, I think it would be detrimental, especially we're at a point right now where information comes fast, right? You pull up YouTube and you've got 6-second videos that people want to watch, right? I mean, things go so quick nowadays that if we miss 70 games, I think there are a lot of people that would just move on. And baseball, you know, it's kind of seeing a bit of a resurgence right now, which is nice. But even saying a bit of a resurgence, guys, we need to keep the momentum. Baseball could quickly jump right off that cliff. I really hope that there's not a 70 game out. I hope we have baseball next year. And I told you last time, I've listened to lots of experts talking about this. I think most people are leaning on the side of that there will not be baseball at the start of the season next year.
What is the biggest holdup you think there is in this conversation? Because to me, it's like you hear the owners want to try to get a salary cap in. They want to get a floor and a ceiling. And even those projections on the floor, I mean, they were talking about a $170 million floor. The Rays spent $106 for the last 7, 8, 9 years. Where are you getting that money from if you're going to go out there and put a floor like that? I mean, Cap, they've never spent over $130 million. And you want them to put 174 on the table? That's not happening in Tampa.
No, and that's why I think that we're headed towards the shutdown, is because the numbers that have been proposed right now have been ridiculous, and both sides honestly seem like they're not budging, which is the worst part about this. I mean, and you say the Rays there are so many teams that the majority of the teams can't afford that. The majority of the teams in baseball can't afford that. Now, yes, the big names that we watch, that we enjoy, the Yankees, Red Sox, Dodgers, they got it. But you start talking about the Rays, the Diamondbacks, the Guardians, like the majority of baseball can't afford that. So we're not even close to figuring out the solution right now, unless we just leave it where it's at, right? And you got super team Dodgers that are going to keep controlling it. So.
No, I'm with you, man. You're not going to put that money out there on the table like that and sit there and say to the Rays, hey, I know you're getting a new ballpark in here, but $174 million is going to be the floor, when people like Eric Neander, the general manager there, have never spent more than $111 million at any time in the last 20 years. That ain't happening. Cab, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. We are going to go Sileo says, and we are going to give you my top 5 college football teams. We will do that next, right here on SportsGrid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS. But then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, we are 2 weeks away from the start of college football. Right around the corner, we have week 0 coming up. TCU and North Carolina from Dublin. That should be a very entertaining ball game. So I get asked all the time, who are my top teams in college football? I haven't really put that out there until right now. My top 5 college football teams, preseason-wise, for the 2026 season. Let's start it off at number 5. I believe it's Notre Dame. Look, Marcus Freeman, I think, has done a great job of recruiting. Who in their right mind would have thought that Marcus Freeman was going to be an upgrade from Brian Kelly? Brian Kelly was there for over a decade at Notre Dame. That football program never, ever achieved, really, outside of 1 year, a shot at a national championship. Look, one thing I'll always say about Notre Dame at times is one of the most overhyped college football program in the country. In the last 53 years, they've won 2 national championships, 1973 and 1988. To sit there and say that Notre Dame has been a national contender each and every single year over the last 53 years is crazy. However, the brand is huge, and it is truly one of the biggest brands in sports, in American sports. But I do believe they've got a lot of talent on that football team, and I do think that Miami-Notre Dame game in November of this year is going to tell us a lot about who may play in the national championship game. At number 4, I'm going to go Georgia. I think the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart are back. I think when you look at what that football program has done over the last 7-8 years with Kirby Smart, I think that football program is back. They play in a great conference. They've got a very unique schedule this year. They've got one of the top 5 recruiting programs in the country this year with these kids coming in. And I do think Georgia is, I think, one of the best, if not the best team in the Southeastern Conference. At number 3, there is no doubt the best roster year in and year out, unfortunately, resides in Columbus. I say that because I do look at Ohio State as a rival to my college, but I've got Ohio State. It's truly one of the greatest rosters. Ryan Day, in my opinion, is a guy, though, that will always be on the hot seat when you're at Ohio State. Even if you go and you lose one ball game, if that one game is to the guys up north, Michigan, you're always going to be on the hot seat. And when you don't win a Big Ten championship or you don't win a national championship, Ohio State is by far the most pressurized job in all of college football. Ohio State, year in and year out, look at the draft. You want to know where your program sits and how the NFL reveres your program? Take a look at how those programs are received when the April draft comes up every year. Look at all the first-round draft choices that Ohio State puts in the NFL. Every single year, they get the best roster in football, and they have, I believe this year, the best roster. I personally don't think they have the right guy at the helm in Ryan Day, but that is truly one of the best programs, if not the preeminent program with talent this year at number 3, Ohio State. I'm an old school guy. I think 2 teams that play for the national championship are your 1 and 2 teams. At number 2, I have the University of Miami. Mario Cristobal has done something I thought was almost unattainable. He's actually turned the program around. If Mario can't do it, nobody can do it. He is a man that played for that program, won 2 national titles himself. And folks, it used to be commonplace. It wasn't how Miami lost games. It was the fact when you upset Miami, those were just iconic moments for other programs. My time at Miami, 3 years, we were 31-1. Started a 58 home win streak. That was history, an ancient history. That's over 35 years ago. Miami's starting to build that back, and I feel it. 41 yards away from winning a national championship. So close, but yet so far. When people stop asking me this question, Sills, when's the Canes back? And are the Canes back? I say stop asking me that question because you answer it with that question. Until they win a national championship, Miami is not back. You have to win. And number 1 is Indiana. How could you bet against Kurtz and the Indiana Hoosiers? You just can't. What this man has done in Bloomington is unbelievable. It's truly one of the greatest stories in the history of American sports. You have to understand something about Indiana. Indiana hadn't been to a Rose Bowl since 1967 when they played OJ in the Rose Bowl. Indiana's the worst program in the country. And for them to win a national title 16-0 is absolutely incredible. And great program, great talent. I got them number 1 again. Preseason. We'll ask Philly Godfather that. Hour 2 next here on SportsGrid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, hour number 2 here. Boy, while we were waiting here, Philly Godfather's going to join us in. Somebody just reached out. It's Tim Donaghy, the guy who was the referee. And he said, make sure you tell Philly Godfather hello. And we're being seen up in Jacksonville right now. Our friend joins us right now. Football season is right around the corner here. We'll get to college football here in a second with him. But again, too, make sure you guys get the fabulous book, too. You guys go to Amazon and you make sure you go out there and you end up getting this book here. It tells the life story of a man of redemption here. And he joins us here, the legendary Philly Godfather. And here we are, man. Hey, when you get ready for a football season, how much goes into the intel of getting ready for a season like the NFL? Let's start there with football on that side and the pro side. How much goes into preparing?
It's a daily thing. We read 10 to 12 hours a day because the information keeps coming in. And as information enters the market, opinions change. And injuries, are big in the NFL. It's a war of attrition. But, yeah, it's a lot of hard work. And it's not like you can read for a couple of weeks and then you're done. It's every day. It's a constant thing. And we never stop. So if you want to make some money in this market, if you want to turn a profit, if you want to beat the VIG, when you're laying 110 to win 100, you got to win more than 52.4% of the games. You really got to do your homework.
All right, so give me your 3 favorites that you would look at right now as you're preparing for the upcoming season. 3 favorites to win the Super Bowl, in your opinion.
I mean, how can you not like, the Rams are at 5-1. I don't like the price. You're getting 5-1 on your money, which ain't bad, but it limits your hedging opportunities later on this season. And Matt Stafford is 100 years old. So if something happens to him, I mean, their backups have looked good in preseason, but it is preseason. So I guess you would have to put the Rams up there. I like the Bengals at 20-1. You get great value. I think the AFC is kind of wide open this year. There's 4 or 5 teams, depending on injuries throughout the season, that can get there. I think the Patriots regress a little bit. I don't see them winning 14 games like they did last season, even though they're probably a 9-10 win team. I like the Bengals at 20-1. I like the Rams at 5-1. And if you want, a dark horse, a sleeper, I like the Falcons to win their division. And if things go right, if the ball bounces their way, you could see them in the NFC Championship games. I just don't think they can beat the Rams, but I think the Rams are the cream of the crop in the NFC. The Eagles, they're projected to have a top 5 offensive line, top 5 defensive line. But Jalen Hurts, he's not an elite quarterback. He's a great quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback. And you lose A.J. Brown, which is tough, man. How do you replace a guy like that on that offense? So, they're probably the 2 strongest teams. And if you want a dark horse, you take the Falcons or maybe take the Chargers if that team can stay healthy.
How about the Lions? And follow me here. A year ago, the Lions, if I'm not mistaken, I think they swept the Bears. And they won both those football games. And they were 4th in total offense. I mean, that's a football team that finished last, I get it, in the North, but they lost their coordinator, Ben Johnson. Looks like they are still elite on offense here. What's your takeaways on the chances of the Lions getting to the NFC Championship game?
I mean, they got a great shot. I think they're favored to win the NFC North. Injuries have really plagued that team the last couple of years. And losing Ben Johnson, I mean, the wheels fell off once he left. Dan Campbell, I was a big fan of his, but when Ben Johnson left, he had a lot of brain cramps during some key situations last year. So I'm not sold on him as a head coach, as a strong head coach. They got a lot of talent in that football team. Their defense has always been a little suspect. Their offense, one of the better offenses in football, kind of like the Dallas Cowboys, 2 of the highest scoring teams in the NFL last season. So, yeah, I mean, they got a shot. But I don't think Dan Campbell's the man ever since Ben Johnson left. That team doesn't look the same offensively.
Do you think the Patriots, I know you mentioned them, you think they're still going to be a good football team, but you're not high in them getting maybe to the AFC Championship game, right? You think they take a step back, and all be said that you probably are picking the Bills in the AFC East, if you're going to pick a team coming out of that division, I know Dolphins and Jets are really not going to threaten. Those are probably wins for the Bills and the Patriots. But if you were picking in that division, would you take the Bills over the Patriots?
Yeah, I think you can lay minus 130 for the Bills to win that division. Super Bowl hangover for the Patriots. They did pick up A.J. Brown, and they do have an explosive offense, but the offensive line is still weak. You saw what happened to Drake May in the playoffs last year. He was running for his life, getting sacked a ton of times. And their defense is strong, but they lost some components on the defensive side of the football. Vrabel, some issues. I think they can get over that in the locker room. But, I see them regressing. There's no way they win 14 games again this year. And that Super Bowl is real,
Absolutely there. So again, too, we got to ask you about the MVP here in the race here. Who would you look at for the MVP? If you were to pick three guys MVP, who would that be?
And if Joe Burrow can stay upright in the offensive line, isn't the worst offensive line in the NFL again this year, which they're projected to be around 20 to 22nd in the NFL. I mean, you look at his passing yards, at almost 4,000 passing yards projection. Probably Joe Burrow. I mean, I could see Patrick Mahomes having, comeback player of the year. He's probably the odds-on favorite if you're looking at that, at around like plus 200 to be comeback player of the year. But I think it's Joe Burrow MVP. Josh Allen's always a threat. I'm not high on Lamar Jackson this year. And Justin Herbert, I mean, they're the guys I'm looking at for MVP in the AFC side.
How about Dak Prescott? Dak's barking a lot. Greatest offense of all time, he's going to have it there. And he said that we're looking at the best offense. I'm hoping that he would say that he would want to win a championship for the first time in 30 years. But what about the Cowboys this year?
Yeah, I got one in the NFC East, 2-1 on your money. I think it's a great price. It's all about the price. Are the Eagles slightly better? Yes, in the nucleus. But the Cowboys do have the better quarterback, in my opinion, passing quarterback during the regular season. And their offense is loaded. I mean, he's another quarterback. His projection is right around 4,000 yards on the season. It's him and Joe Burrow who have the two highest projections on the year for passing yards. So, their offense is going to be arguably the best in the NFC this year. I think they scored the fifth most amount of points in the NFL last season. I mean, can their defense get the job done? Probably, but it's a tough division, man. The Giants got better. Commanders are going to be healthier. Eagles are still tough to beat, but I think the Cowboys win that division.
Philly, when you're looking at two teams like, say, the Rams and the 49ers, how much do you look at the fact that those two rosters are old and that any kind of scenario where you end up getting injured, like when a Trent Williams gets injured, the offensive tackle for the 49ers, you mentioned Matthew Stafford. How much do you play that into projecting? Because, again, like you're saying, it's not just the fact you got to hope for good performance by the players. Now you're hoping of the war of attrition that these guys are lasting. You're talking about a 37, 38-year-old quarterback in Los Angeles with the Rams, and you're talking about an aging and an often injured running back in Christian McCaffrey. How do you plug that in when you're putting an analysis with those two teams like the 49ers and Rams?
Yeah, it's really hard. And if you look at the 49ers last couple of seasons, they've been decimated with injuries, and Shanahan still finds a way to win 11. 12 games, 10 games. And last year, he came into Philly as 7-point underdogs and beat the Eagles. So coaching matters. Two great coaches in McVay and Shanahan. They can fill in the holes as long as the cuts aren't too deep. Brock Purdy, Mac Jones. I mean, they got a good backup in case Brock Purdy goes down. They got another great offense in the 49ers. It's really hard. You do the best you can. You look at the nucleuses of the team, and that's what you really worry about, the offensive line, defensive line. And teams like the Eagles with Lane Johnson, they're so top-heavy. If he goes down, next thing you know, they're only winning 30% of the games. Same with the 49ers. When Trent Williams goes down, they don't win as many games. So they're the positions you're really looking at trying to handicap when it comes to injuries. All the other stuff, they can fill in the gaps.
Dark horse. And we'll get to this here in a second here. I'm going to get his dark horses, and we're also going to talk a little bit of college football with the legendary Philly Godfather, but our great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the number one injury law firm in all of America for a reason. With over $30 billion recovered, there's no firm like it in the world, let alone America, that fights for you and your family. Tell you about the family in Pennsylvania that was initially offered $650K. They got nearly $30 million in settlement. Or the family in Florida that was initially offered $350,000. They got nearly $12 million in settlement. Go to forthepeople.com/Big Sills or pound law 529. That is forthepeople.com/Big Sills or pound law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sills sent you. We will talk a little bit more NFL with Philly Godfather and also his thoughts on the upcoming college football season. 2 weeks out. Next, here on SportsGrid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS. But then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
We are talking to the legendary Philly Godfather here, and we appreciate him coming aboard here. I want to ask you about dark horses in the NFL. You know, you're one of the guys that always does this. Hey, the Rams are favored. That means I'm not picking them. I'm always going the other way. You always bet against and always go the opposite of the public here. So give me 3 teams that you think could be dark horses out there that could get to the Super Bowl this year.
Obviously, the Bengals at 20-1. Not a little bit of a dark horse, but with Joe Burrow there and that offense, they're going to be hard to beat. They're going to be favored in 15 of 17 games this season. I bet them to win their division. I bet them to win the Super Bowl. I bet them to win the AFC Conference. Another team is the Atlanta Falcons. Grab them at 4-1 to win their division. One more dark horse. I mean, the Panthers are intriguing. They were really greedy last year by that division. I mean, you flip a coin, but I think the Atlanta Falcons are better in that division. 49ers, they're not really a dark horse, but with everyone expecting the Rams to crush everyone in Seattle to maybe make another Super Bowl appearance, 49ers are there. Who else? Cowboys, a little bit of a dark horse. So if I had to give you 3, I guess the Bengals, the Falcons, and the Cowboys.
Let me ask you about one more here. The Houston Texans. Is CJ Stroud, is he one of the guys, in your opinion, that holds that team back? Because, man, if they had any good quarterback play with that defense, you're going to get to an AFC championship game with that defense. It's one of the best. D'Amico Ryans, I think, is one of the best defensive-minded guys in all of pro football. CJ Stroud just has to be decent, doesn't he, for that team to go far?
I'm not really blaming CJ Stroud. My son actually took the Texans at 21 to win the Super Bowl this year. I think it's their offensive line. He was running for his life. I don't know how many times he was sacked in the playoffs last year, but it was way too many times. And over the last couple of seasons, he's had some lingering injuries, but I think it's the offensive line that's holding that team back more than anything. They got great coaching, arguably the scariest defense in the NFL. And if he can get back to form from a couple of years ago, and that offensive line can just be mediocre. They don't got to be great, maybe like between 10 and 17th in the league. They're a very, very dangerous team.
All right, I want to go to college football here. You know, there's a big game coming up in November. this year. It's Notre Dame, Miami. And my top 5 football teams, I put Notre Dame at 5. I put Georgia at 4. I put Ohio State at 3. I got Miami at 2. And I got Indiana 1. Now, this is preseason. I'm not saying they're going to end this way, but I think these are your 5 best teams. And by the end of the year, you can probably put that order any way you want. Let me start with Notre Dame first. What do you make of Notre Dame, and how good do you think that team's going to be this year? Yes, the Irish.
I bet them to win it all. I took them at 7-1 for big money. Their average point spread on a weekly basis is going to be minus 23 points. I think they got a lot of, they're a little upset from what happened last year. They didn't let them in the playoffs. CJ Carr, odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. If not the best coach, Indiana's got a great coach, maybe the second best coach in college football with Freeman. Their defense is lights out. They got a cupcake schedule, which should help them avoid, injuries. They're going to be hard to beat this year. I got them at number 1. I think they're the best team in college football. I think they spent the 5th most amount of money. All those teams you just mentioned, other than Indiana, I think they were top 5 in spending money this year. I think Texas might have been number 1. But I like Notre Dame to win the whole thing this year. I'm big on them. And again, like I said, when you look at their schedule, it's going to be cupcake. And then they got to do it in the playoffs. And I think they can get it done. They got a chip on their shoulder.
$44 million the University of Miami spent, second most only to Texas A&M and their roster that they spent this year. So what do you make of Georgia this year and their chances of getting to an SEC championship game and winning it and maybe getting into the title game?
Yeah, I mean, they're right there with everyone else. I mean, Kirby Smart's one of the better coaches in college football. They spend the most amount of money. They always got the best talent. It could be Georgia and Notre Dame, depending on, how the playoffs are set up for the national championship game. I think Miami falls off a little bit. I like betting on teams that have their quarterbacks coming back from the previous season. That's big for me, that nucleus that stays the same. You look at returning production and stuff to that nature when you're looking to bet on these college football teams. But, yeah, Georgia's up there. I mean, how can you not? I wouldn't bet against them, put it that way.
How about Indiana? I don't know what Kurtz 2.0 is going to be, because if you remember right, he brought 13 guys with him from James Madison on transfer and brought those guys into Bloomington. Well, those dudes are now gone. So the new crew that has come in, I think the encore is going to be interesting to see what these guys do. And 2.0, Kurt Cignetti here. Now, look, I get it. It's been 2 years of dominance since he's been in Bloomington. Are you expecting them to fall off just a little bit, or do you think they're going to be right there in the conversation to win the Big Ten championship and maybe get to a title game?
I mean, they got the 3rd best odds to make the playoffs. I think they got the 6th best odds to win the national championship. But again, I mean, last year they had Mendoza, who was the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. They don't have that this year, and that hurts. I mean, the most impactful player on that football field, week in, week out, is your quarterback. And if you don't have the same type of caliber quarterback, it makes it a little bit more difficult. As we know, turnovers are big in college football and the NFL. Really dictates who wins the game. And when you don't have a quarterback up there that's got the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman this year, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So I see them regressing a little bit. I mean, he's a great coach. Like I said, maybe the best coach in college football, but I don't see them getting back to the national championship game.
I said this about the University of Miami. They went out and got Darian Mensah, the kid from Duke, paying him $6.5 million. I'll tell you one thing Mario Cristobal is doing. Going out and recruiting high school quarterbacks any longer is not the fashionable thing to do any longer, really, not just at the University of Miami, but in major programs around the country. They're looking for the experienced guy. The one thing, Philly, that he has done since he's been in South Florida? He's taken what he did at Alabama as the offensive line coach and at Oregon when they had Penei Sewell up there and he recruited him. And he is turning that University of Miami O-line and D-line into Southeastern Conference football teams. That's where I think, now look, you're right. Akeem Mesidor and Reuben Bain are going to be difficult. I think those two guys are going to be more difficult to replace than even Carson Beck. When do you look at Miami this year?
I mean, they got better odds to make the playoffs than Georgia, than Texas Tech. I think they're 10-1 to win the national championship. And if they can get in, anything can happen, but their defense definitely lost some key guys on the defense side of football. That defense was scary last season. And if Carson Beck doesn't have a couple brain cramps in the playoffs, I mean, watch out. But they're a formidable opponent. Can they get to national championship games? I still think Notre Dame's better, Ohio State's better, Oregon's better, Georgia might be slightly better, but they got to get in. And if they get in the playoffs, anything can happen, Dan.
Absolutely, here. Miami, Notre Dame in a title game. Let me just say this: the ratings would be off the charts. Sileo sideline scoop next here on SportsGrid. And we have Sileo sideline scoop here, and we're going to go around the NFL for week 2 of the exhibition season here. And I got to tell you, the mess in Cleveland, and what did you not expect when you had this scenario play out? We mentioned it in the open. And now Deshaun Watson is going after the dog pound and saying that those fans there in Cleveland were cheering when he ended up getting injured. And that now has become personal when it comes to the battle with him and Shedeur Sanders. Look, there is no doubt that Todd Monken, the brand new head football coach, has got quite an issue going on there in Cleveland on trying to pick between those two. I actually saw some light with Shedeur Sanders yesterday. I thought Shedeur was good. I thought he was able to take on the entire offense. And I'll say this to you. If I were the Cleveland Browns, I would be doing everything in my power to move off of the Deshaun Watson contract and give Shedeur Sanders the opportunity to maybe win that job and see what you got. Give him 17 ball games. If not, and the thing goes south, you get an opportunity to go out and possibly recruit with the number 1 overall player in Arch Manning if you happen to think that Arch Manning's that guy. Personally, I want to see a little bit more about Arch Manning, but for me, I want to be able to see Shedeur Sanders, and I want to see what Shedeur can do. Boy, I got to tell you, we said this right out of the gate up in Minnesota. When they ended up drafting J.J. McCarthy, I never saw it. And J.J. McCarthy has been an absolute train wreck as the quarterback up in Minnesota. Kyler Murray, once he initially signed that contract, everyone knew he was already automatically going to be the winner of that job because Kyler Murray is not a bad football player. Kyler Murray has some poor study habits maybe, but when it comes to ability, Kyler Murray was not going to not win that job. J.J. McCarthy, when he was at Michigan, there was a football game. I remember in the second half against Penn State, they didn't even throw a football in that game. That game was not about throwing the ball there at Michigan. One of the reasons why I never thought Lofston, the guy that's playing up in Chicago now, the tight end, I didn't think he was going to be that great a pick. He's turning out to be a weapon, Colson Lofston, in the National Football League. That was because the quarterback there at Michigan was not a top-flight pro-style quarterback. So again, moving off of J.J. McCarthy, his name is already being floated around. Adam Schefter even said that the Philadelphia Eagles have shown interest as a potential landing spot for him as a backup for Jalen Hurts. All right, what can you say here about the Arizona Cardinals? Look, I've seen some quarterback play. I actually like Jacoby Brissett. I think Jacoby Brissett can play some football. But I'll tell you somebody else I do think is Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck has put up a pretty good spring. I think Carson Beck has put up some pretty good numbers for them to be able to go out and try to win that football job. Look, I like Jacoby Brissett. I think Brissett gives them a chance to win ball games. You got to remember, this is the Arizona Cardinals. This is a place where majority of the quarterbacks go and die unless you're Kurt Warner. So for me, I would give Brissett the job, but I would also give an opportunity to Carson Beck to try to win that job because you're looking for your future. Is Jacoby your future or is Carson Beck your future? We'll see what Arizona ends up doing. Let's go to Dak here. Got to say it. Dak's talking about, and one thing I didn't like when I heard Dak say this, I want to have the greatest offense in the history of the National Football League. Hey, Dak, how about winning a championship? It's not about putting up the greatest numbers on the planet. It's about putting up wins. It's about putting up wins that matter. It's great to throw the football around for 38 points a game. It's great to have an offense that is without a doubt one of your better offensive units with George Pickens and with CeeDee Lamb and with Williams running the ball. But at the end of the day, son, when you're in Dallas, it's enough. Troy Aikman was right this week. Hey, the Cowboy fans deserve. You've got to go out and win games that matter, man. Right now, you're not even in Danny White's range. Danny White went to NFC Championship games. You and Tony Romo are in the same boat. The greatest quarterbacks to play in Dallas, Aikman, Staubach, and Danny White. You know why? Those were the quarterbacks that won. All right. Speaking of coaching, we are going to talk to one of my favorite people on the planet. I will tell you, we will talk some NFL and we will talk some college with the legendary Herm Edwards. Next, here on SportsGrid. And one of my favorite people to get a chance to talk some ball with is ESPN's Herm Edwards, and he's here now with us. And I was going to start it off with NFL football, but he's a little bit closer to the Texas program than what I thought. And now that he's got a couple of his kids working for Sark there, and I'll ask you flat out about Arch Manning, Coach. I mean, a lot of pressure on the kid a year ago. He goes up against the Sean Desai defense last year, and, he goes in there and actually gets an opportunity to go against a pretty good defense. And you tell me, help me out here. What do you make of Arch Manning?
Well, you're right. The last name of Manning, I mean, this poor guy's had pressure on him since he was in junior high school, probably, right? And now he went to the University of Texas. That's one of the better programs in the country. And, last year, as you mentioned, he struggled a little bit early, but now I think at the end of the year last year, he kind of found his sea legs and, going to spring ball. I went to spring ball about 2 weeks ago and watched the team practice. They have some talented players on both sides of the ball. And, I think when you look at their schedule, they play Ohio State at home. They have to go to Tennessee. So their first 4 games, they got two big-time programs with Ohio State at home and Tennessee on the road, and they have 2 other teams they're playing. I can't remember the names, but I think if they can go 4-0, them first 4, they got a chance because Arch he's a better quarterback than he was last year. He reminds me a lot of his grandpa, right? Who I played against with the Saints. He's athletic like that. He can run. I mean, he's a big athletic guy. I mean, he can run, he can throw. But I think now he feels comfortable in his offense, and they've got a lot of really good players.
Coach, building a championship football team today, and I've had this conversation with Mario Cristobal. How do you build how do you build a culture inside there when you've got all these kids transferring from different programs, and all of a sudden, within a matter of 6 months, you've got to try to build something and understanding. It's blind faith, Coach, with coaches trying to tell kids, hey, look, we want to get you to this point. We believe that you guys can do this. How do you sell that blind faith to guys who are not in your program over 2 years, 3 years like it used to be?
Well, I think this, and this, you're a former player. I think when you have a relationship with a coach, that helps. And I think your assistant coach have to be more aware of that in today's world than they were, 10, 15 years ago when a kid went to school and basically he had to sit out if he's going somewhere else. Now these guys, they have, if you go in the players' parking lot, they got better cars than the coaches. So, and they know that if I'm a really good player, somebody else will come get me if I want to go. So I think relationships, and most of these kids, as you know, want to go to the league. Can you help them get, you always say, can you help them get to the league? You can't give them talent, but you give them knowledge. I always say, when you're a player, you're an information gatherer. And coaches are sources of information. They give it to the players to make them better. And so that has to be the relationship between player and coach.
Coach, Jimmy used to say it. I'll give you the yellow brick road and show you how to walk it, but you got to walk it yourself there to get down that lane there. So let me take you to the NFL here. Coach, How would you handle the Cleveland situation between Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson?
Well, after, the first game you watched and you said, Deshaun, hadn't played in a while. It looked pretty good, and the second game, obviously, Shedeur looked much more comfortable inside the pocket, went through his progressions, threw the ball nicely. And when you listen to Deshaun speak, to me, it was like he's done. He's done. He's just done. I mean, I think he's tired of playing in Cleveland. He probably needs to go somewhere else. And probably the organization needs to understand that too. Look, and I understand they paid him a lot of money. But remember this one. Russell Wilson was owned about $25 million or something like that, wasn't he?
Yep.
When they said, you know what? We got to move on. And they moved on. And Seattle ended up going, to the playoffs. I mean, so eventually, if you're the Cleveland Browns, you got to figure this thing out and say, hey, look, we got to, if Shedeur's the guy, let him be the guy, and let's move on. Because here, we know this. If Shedeur doesn't meet the billing after a year of playing football, there's 7 quarterbacks coming out this year. 7, right? In the draft, there's 7 of them. We mentioned one of them, Arch. There's a bunch of them coming. So Cleveland will be in position. If it doesn't work out, they'll be in position to get a quarterback.
Coach, how do you have that come to Jesus conversation with Deshaun Watson? Like, you're sitting down, you're there, you're Todd Monken, you've been in this position. Yeah, I mean, I don't think fans understand. Sometimes guys are shooting stars. They'll be great for a small period of time, or there's some guys that are going to be great for a long period of time, back end of their contracts, front end of their contracts. How do you deal with a guy that was so great in Houston, and then you see what's going on now? Is it environment, coach? Is it coaching? What happened to Deshaun Watson?
Well, I think he's lost his mojo. And when you stand before the media and you start talking about the fans booing you, that's never a good sign. It's just not. You're hearing the noise. You can't hear the noise. And he's been through a lot. Now, he brought a lot of this on himself, on his own. But these fans right now, I mean, I'm not saying you got to get ready for the fan, but I just think it's gotten to the point to where, like he said, I got 17 road games. Well, who wants to hear that from your starting quarterback that has to play at home? He's saying the home game's a road game because when he plays quarterback, the fans don't like him. Now, I'll say this. Throw a couple touchdown passes, they may calm down a little bit, win a couple games. They may calm down a little bit, but he has to understand that. He's the only guy that can fix it when he plays. Because fans, as mad as they are right now at him, they win some games and he goes and throws a couple touchdown passes and starts playing really good. The fans will go, well, okay. All right. I guess he's our quarterback.
The dog pound's just like every other fan base. Selective amnesia when you start winning, right? When
Correct.
You start winning, that's what ends up happening. Geno Smith 2.0 in New York will be what?
I hope he plays in the regular season the way he played that last preseason game. He gave the Jets life. He gave them, if you're a Jet fan or a Jet player, after that game, you say, we got a shot to compete in this division. Now, there's two bullies in the division. The best player in football plays in the division, Josh Allen, by the way. They got to play the Buffalo Bills twice. And then those pesky Patriots, they just know how to win. So, they're fighting with Miami, who's probably in a rebuilding mode, the Dolphins right now. I mean, I think that's the direction they're headed in. But the Jets looked a whole lot better with Geno at quarterback.
Absolutely. Frank right there, too. Real quick.
Yeah.
Jackson Dart. How would you handle Jackson Dart? All the stuff with the blue tent. How would you handle him?
Well, I would tell him, look, the reason that every time you get hit and you go down, there was this guy, Tua, that played for Miami, and the league remembers what that looked like. It was hard to watch. So what you got to do is when you get knocked down on the ground, you got to get up. You can't roll around. You can't lay there for a minute, because if you do that, you're going to the tent, period. Right? I mean, that's what and you got to understand something. I tell all quarterbacks that have the ability to run, know when the journey's over. Run out of bounds or slide, because you got to play the next snap. We can't have you in the tent.
Absolutely. And I look at Jackson Dart. There was a player back in your day by the name of Burt Jones.
Yes.
And to me, this is like a modern-day Burt Jones. When Burt Jones was throwing the ball around, the guy won the most valuable player award with the Baltimore Colts, but he was ahead of his time because he was a guy that was a running quarterback, and guys like Herm were out there knocking guys around the way they were back in the day. You couldn't do that. Coach, we got another segment coming up here. We're going to go back into the National Football League with our friend from ESPN, Herm Edwards. We'll do that next. You're on SportsGrid.
I know you didn't. Talk.
I'm innocent. Got the wrong guy. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Okay, it was me. I did it.
Bringing an owl to an interrogation? That's a power move.
Every time.
Yeah. Hiring America's largest injury law firm for your injury? That's also a power move. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury...
here. We were talking to my friend Herm Edwards here. Great story there with Tony Dungy here. We had on a couple weeks ago here. That must have been one of the greatest coaching staffs that you were ever around, with all those legendary names that were on that side of the football. When Tony constructed that staff, when he was in Tampa, you were part of that as well. Mike Tomlin was on that coaching staff as well. Truly one of the best staffs of all time.
It really was. Lovie Smith, Rod Marinelli. Once I left and became the head coach of the Jets, Mike came in, took my spot, Tomlin. Yeah, Tony had a great staff of coaches. And, that was probably the most fun I've ever had. Because we took over a team that was kind of talented, but didn't know how to win, like you mentioned earlier. And to watch that thing get turned around, it was so much fun.
Coach, how do you sell blind faith? I tell people this all the time. Like when I was talking to the Miami kids a year ago, people were asking me, what's the number one thing you tell people? I go, well, blind faith is, when a coach is talking, he was like religion. You have blind faith that you believe you're going to see your maker in the end of this. You believe in God. I believe in that. I believe in all of that. When a coach tells you this is what we're going to be at the end of the season, it's blind faith that you're teaching these players. How do you convey that message?
They got to learn to trust you, right? Not on the practice field, but in moments in the game. That's what they want to see. I always tell coaches, they say, you know what? It's easy to coach in practice. But in the game, you got 30 seconds to fix the player. When he makes an error, he comes to the sideline, that player is looking for answers. You can't give him any more talent. You can't change the defense. You got to fix him. How do you fix him? Well, when he leaves and goes back on the field, he goes, okay, coach, I'm good. That's what the player wants to know. The players don't want to fail. They don't want to fail. When the player comes to the sideline, he's looking for answers. He's not looking for you to holler at him. I said, don't holler at him. I said, he already's embarrassed. I said, how do you have 30 seconds to fix the player? How do you do that?
Coach, I want to stay in Tampa then. Todd Bowles. Are you a fan of Todd Bowles and what he's doing there in Tampa? Is he getting too much criticism?
He is. I mean, and this is what happens when you stay at a place and you win, but you don't ever get over the hump. Story, Tony Dungy, right? That's what happened to Tony. And Gruden comes in. Gruden does a good job, takes a team that basically Tony built and goes to the Super Bowl. Good for Gruden. Tony ends up winning his Super Bowl, going to the Colts. So that happens. You can win, but if you don't win enough of those big games or get to the big game, fans get tired. They go, he ain't good. He ain't a good coach. Yeah, he can't get us over the hump. Ownership listens and goes, okay, well, we got to make a change.
How would you coach Kyler Murray in Minnesota and trying to get him to be another reclamation project like we saw with Sam Darnold in Seattle? How would you coach Kyler Murray?
Well, I think you got to use his attributes and you got to move the pocket because he's not very big. He doesn't like playing in that pocket. He can't see. I mean, not very big. I mean, I had him in the Under Armour All-American game. I remember when he came out of high school and was getting ready to go to college. But a tremendous talent, can make all the throws. So you got to move the pocket. You got to do a lot of things. Now, getting him to play under center sometimes is difficult because any play action, he's got to turn his way away from the defense, and then he's got to set up in the middle of the field. Well, sometimes he can't see the rush. That's why he likes in the gun a little bit more so he can see things. So you spread people out. He makes good decisions with the ball, and defensively, you're scared to death because he's quick. He can make yards with his legs, so you have to contain him. You got to keep him in the pocket. You can't run by him because if you do, he'll dip around the edge and he'll get on the edge and he'll either throw it or run it. So he's a dual threat quarterback.
Coach, for you just said something. I've asked numerous coaches this. There's certain coaches that don't want any quarterback under 6'2" playing for them, just the fact of what you just said. And with more of the dual threat guys coming out of college, we see the kids out of Alabama, Jalen Hurts. A lot of these guys are about 6 feet, 6'1". Again, we're seeing more of that type of player. Do you think that there is something to that? Because I know Breeze came up with the 9-step drop instead so he could see over it a little bit more, created passing lanes by sliding laterally. How would you coach that guy? Or do you have a priority that you don't want a quarterback under 6'2"?
Well, you like them a little bit bigger, but you also like the guys that can win. That's kind of important. And winning's winning, whether you're 6'5" or 6'2", if you can win.
Right on.
And you know, and he, to me, the quarterback has to have a presence in the huddle. And he's got to earn the trust of the players, and the players got to believe, okay, this is the last possession. We need to go down the field and score. They trust this guy. He got to earn that now. I always, you know, what I used to do with young quarterbacks, when they went into the huddle, I would go in the huddle with them. I wanted to hear them. I wanted to hear how they talk to the team. Situational football. Because to me, that was more important than anything. His height, how hard he could throw it, didn't matter. How do you communicate it? How do you look at these guys in the face? An old 10-year vet, right guard over there, and a 9-year tackle that's been. How you gonna look that old man in the face and convince him, hey guys, we're gonna get ready to go down the field. We're gonna score here. Because that's what the great ones do. They walk in the huddle and everybody goes, okay, it's time, let's go.
Coach, there's a guy in Chicago that I think you're talking about this here because how about this? So you have Jared Goff, one completely different style. Then you go to Chicago and you've got Caleb Williams. I think that shows the versatility of Ben Johnson as a coach, going from a pure drop back guy to a guy that says, this is what the skill set. I don't think that's as easy as a lot of people think, going from one skill set to another and still getting the same result.
You're using the player's talent. And I can remember when Chicago drafted Caleb Williams, we played against him numerous times when I was at Arizona State and he was at USC. It was Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels, right? So I watched him play in college. So he goes to the Bears in his first year, and they're kind of booing the guy, thinking he's bad. And Ben Johnson goes there, and I said it on television. I said, this guy now, watch what happens to him. Last year, he lit it up. Ben Johnson put the offense in that played to his skill set, and he's on his way.
Absolutely. I could not believe what he's done and the job that he's done there with him. And I think Chicago's going to be a good football team over the next couple of years. Coach, I appreciate you as much as you know that how much I think of you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Anytime, my friend. Look forward to visiting with you again.
You got it. The great Herm Edwards. Final thoughts next here on SportsGrid. As we close up the second exhibition season, or second week of the exhibition season here for the National Football League, one thing comes to mind, and it's the Miami Dolphins. You know, I brought up the fact that when I was at the University of Miami, what a great weekend it used to be for me growing up in South Florida. Dolphin games on Saturday, Hurricane games on Sunday. That's how I spent my teenage years. Dolphins never lost at the Orange Bowl, and the Hurricanes never lost at the Orange Bowl as well. I was there the night that Dan Marino went crazy against the Chicago Bears on the sidelines. Don Shula and Joe Robbie, the then owner of the team, would invite the Hurricane guys to be on the sidelines and watch Miami Dolphin football. If it was a Saturday night, if it was a Sunday, it just was one of the best relationships of all time. And the reason I say this is because Joe Robbie knew how to run a football team. The former owner of the Miami Dolphins was one of the greatest owners in pro football history. He was the guy that convinced Don Shula to leave the Baltimore Colts and to come and take over from George Wilson. The Miami Dolphin was a fledgling AFL football team. In the process, they brought in one of the greatest coaches of all time, and Don Shula, who, God rest his soul, was a dear friend of ours, was just absolutely one of the greatest motivators and people on building a football team you could ever imagine. Shula went out, got himself Bobby Beathard, put him in the front office, and they would go out and win, and they would go and build one of the greatest dynasties of all time. People I told you earlier, my producer's 20, he's in his early 20s. He would never know Dolphin football was at one time a gold standard in the National Football League. They were beating teams like those legendary Steeler teams. They were beating the Raider teams because they had insane personnel and because they had direction under Joe Robbie and Don Shula. Those franchises were incredible. 3 straight years, they won AFC championships. 2 Super Bowls in that process, back to back. One of those teams just happened to be undefeated. Think about that in a 3-year run. And the quarterback wasn't named Marino. It was Bob Greasy. They won 3 AFC titles, 2 straight Super Bowls, and one team was undefeated. Arguably the greatest run of all time in pro football history with that undefeated football team. Shula knew how to build it. He knew how to build. He knew how to evolve. Fast forward 10 years, they end up getting Dan Marino in the building. He was a run-first guy, played tight defense on the other side with the no-name, and they would play that style forever. When they got Dan Marino, no way. Don Shula was evolving with the game and turned in one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in Dan Marino. Look, I know Marino never won a Super Bowl, but if you put talent on the greatest thrower of the football, nobody comes close to Dan Marino. Dan played in the game today where you couldn't mug receivers or you couldn't hit quarterbacks. Marino would throw for 10,000 yards today. The way he saw the game, the way the organization saw. Now we're here. It's been 15 years since the Miami Dolphins have won a playoff game. 15 years. And they're still trying to replace Dan Marino. This is after the fact. And this is after they gave Tagovailoa $53 million in a contract extension that never worked. Chris Greer was a general manager of the football team for over a decade and never won a playoff game. How do you hold a job that long and not win a playoff game? Comes down to ownership. Wayne Huizenga was not a very good owner. And as a matter of fact, Stephen Ross is not a very good owner. Stephen Ross sits in New York, listens to WFAN, and looks and listens and how they talk about the Giants and Jets and thinks he can run the Miami Dolphins the same way. He's a disconnected owner. The Dolphins have lost their identity as a franchise. Folks, that's the worst roster in all of pro football. There is not a worse roster. I saw them play over the weekend. It's a collection of nobodies. I have never seen the Miami Dolphins in this poor of a shape. And it all really starts with the owner. The owner will go out into the community and get renovations and $300 million to fix up Hard Rock. But at the end of the day, He's never fixed his football team up. The Dolphins have had an issue with two horrific owners, Mr. Blockbuster, Wayne Huizenga, and Stephen Ross, the art gallery. What do those two owners have in common? They basically lit a blowtorch to the legacy of the Miami Dolphins. Nobody today knows that team was one of the gold standards. Today, it's a laughingstock. It's the worst franchise in football, run by the worst owner in football. Sad story in South Florida with no end in sight. All right. Have a great rest of your Sunday. We will see you next week. Catch you on the flip side.